So we're back for another installment of IndieSeen, and we're going to be talking about Goodbye Dragon Inn from the year 2003 by Tsai Ming-Liang. And yeah, before we get to that, we're going to talk about the Secret Society for Slow Romance and the forthcoming sequel. Tell me about it, Sujewa. What's going on with this movie? Or should I say movies?
Movies. There's going to be four. So I'm working on the plots. So on Slow Romance 1, we got a lot of press coverage. A really good review came out on Film Threat in late January. And now I'm getting ready to promote the movie in a huge way. Starting in March, there'll be daily ads on Film Threat for about 6 months, possibly a year, on their website and also on a lot of other platforms that they use. Also, I'm doing 100 blogs, daily updates, plus reaching out to all the media worldwide. So you're gonna hear about Slow Romance or Slow Romance 1 a lot. So the goal is to try to get 1 million people to hear about it. It's an experiment, a distribution and marketing experiment. I'm keeping notes, and at the end of the year, I'll write a book about it. And I may do a fundraiser for the distribution work. The goal is to make it famous by the end of the year. Let's see how that goes. So far, it's good. About 10% of the, no, about 20% of the people who play the trailer are renting the movie.
Wow.
I'm not counting, thank you. I'm not counting the numbers until the end of the year. Better that way. So yeah. Numbers are secret until then. So on Slow Romance 2, we're going to address one of your criticisms, which was the plan to end poverty was not, fully presented or fully worked out in Slow Romance 1.
It was teased. It was teased for the sequel. There you go.
That's right. So that gave us an idea for the sequel, which is tell multiple stories in the sequel, but also fully flesh out the plan to end poverty worldwide. So the main title for Slow Romance 2 is New York Lovers, and it's myself and Leah in the Renee and Allison roles. Plus, we're going to bring in 2 other characters: a filmmaker who's also the most sensual and soothing film critic, and she's going to be involved in the ending poverty plan. So it's kind of a film critic we've never seen in the movies, like super soothing, super nice. Also a filmmaker. So obviously fiction, film critics are not that nice. So except for a few maybe.
All right. Got to stand up for my kind here.
That's right. The other character is also a filmmaker, but she's also the person who's most knowledgeable about history in the world. And so these 4 work together to solve some mutual problems and come up with the plan that would that we know is going to work in 10 years, but in 10 years time. Plus, we're going to go more into the relationship. Some people were saying there wasn't enough romance in the previous movie. We're going to go more into that. It'll be beautiful shots. Visually, I'm coming up with the entirely new concerns to deal with, not just shots of the city and shots of the characters, but it'll be interesting. I'm using show off the camera. There we go. 4K. It's coming through. It's coming through. There we go.
Yep, there it is. So it's a Canon what?
It's a Canon XA50 4K camcorder with a 1-inch sensor. It's like the biggest and heaviest I've used in a while. This reminds me of a shot from our podcast in 2019 when I showed Canon XA11 to you. That was what we used to shoot a werewolf.
Excellent. So, and you've been doing some camera tests and everything, right? So how's that coming out? Is the quality and the look that you're getting from the film, is that at all reshaping your conception of it? Or is it just you found the camera that is going to help bring your vision closest to the screen?
Well, the vision's always rough until you see the physical image. Mm-hmm. So you kind of work both the vision and the image together. This I think will allow me to create, better looking images than I've ever done.
Wow.
Because of the 1-inch sensor, to get film geeky, 1-inch sensor and 4K allows you to create images that are much more detailed than from just a regular HD. camera with the smaller sensor. So
What is the what now? I should probably know this, but what is the sensor? Explain the sensor to me and to those who are not into the technical aspect of filmmaking.
Sure. 16 millimeter film,
Hmm.
8 millimeter film.
Yeah.
So those sizes, the sensor is the electronic device that captures the image in a camcorder or any digital image making device. People can Google it and there's lots of material on it. This is just off the top of my head version of it. So back in the day, we used film. Then humans invented electronic sensors to capture images. So a movie like Attack of the Clones was shot on a 2/3 inch broadcast sensor. So that's the size of 8 millimeter film, right? So fast forward to 2022, this camera has a 1 inch sensor, which is one of the bigger sensors, not as big as full frame or 35 millimeter, but it's the size of Super 16 millimeter film. And so it has, like 8 million points, little dots or whatever they're called that create the image. So it can create a very rich image. So
wait, are you talking about pixels or are you talking about something else?
It's pixels like, yeah, I think it's either, each of this tech for video and still photography and television have a different terminology. But I think, it's something like pixels. This has like 8.9 million or whatever that creates the image. So yeah, sensors, to put it briefly, is the electronic version of the size of film that were used back in the day.
It's funny you mentioned Attack of the Clones because I watched that yesterday with my son, the first time watching it. Yeah,
I was the pioneer, as we all know, in using digital. Not a great storyteller by himself when it comes to Star Wars.
Nope.
And visually, there are lots of problems with that, but he keeps updating it. But also he's super rich. Send us some money, George.
There you go. He can be part of the 1 million that are going to get exposure to slow romance. So you've got Renee, the happiest man in North America. And then one of your other crew from the sequel is going to be the most knowledgeable person about history in the world.
True.
So you're kind of developing this. You've got 4 films on the docket, kind of going the Avatar / Matrix model of film sequels.
Perhaps influenced by Disney and Marvel announcing 50,000 movies.
Are you building a super team of filmmakers? Is that what you're doing for your universe?
Something. I'm inventing. I'm improvising. I was like, well, if they're going to do that, I got to do something similar. So we can't have them take over every screen. So, so we have the hardest, the most productive person in North America.
That's right.
New York City.
Allison.
We have the most sensual film critic ever, or most sensual film critic, I assume, in the world, or New York, or at least. And we have the most knowledgeable person who's most knowledgeable about history on Earth. So very interesting characters.
Well, if I might plant a seed of an idea for the 3rd film, that's usually where one of the heroes turns bad, or they run into like a doppelganger dark version of themselves. Renee, it was mentioned in the first Secret Society for Slow Romance, is the happiest person in North America.
Right.
There was someone in South America who potentially there was a rivalry there. I think you should meet that person. We should meet that person in part 3, possibly even visiting South America, because everything will be opened up by then. So you could make it happen, or at least build a South America set.
That's right. You never know. The 3rd movie is about Renee. 4th movie is about Allison making a movie. 3rd movie is about Renee helping some people become happier. So we'll see. The scripts are coming together, and I'm looking forward to filming these and editing these. I hope to have part 2 out by early June. So you'll be one of the first people to get it. So maybe in mid-May you'll get it. We already did a test shoot and some improvised rehearsals about a week ago, and things are going well. So it's giving me ideas. We're bouncing ideas, myself and Leah, and writing things down. So it's coming together soon.
Excellent. Well, I want to ask you just briefly before we get to Goodbye
Sure,
Dragon Inn,
we have
because
time.
it's fascinating, this idea that you're putting out this big kind of, experimental publicity blitz for the first film, and yet
Mhm.
the sequel is going to be out in, when you say out, you mean like out and distributed, people are going to be able to watch it.
At least, at least on Vimeo VOD by June is the plan.
Are you at all worried that there could be confusion if you have a new movie out and you're running ads for the first one? Or are you going to, like the Film Threat thing, you're going to switch over those ads to be Slow Romance 1 and 2 by the time, the end of the year hits?
The goal in 2022 was to give as much of a push as possible for Slow Romance 1. So
Mhm.
I'm probably going to push that the most. And I'll also push Slow Romance 2. Maybe people will see the first one, then they'll see an ad for the second one.
Okay, cool.
For
Um,
2022, mostly 1. And by the time we get to the end of 2022, then we'll ramp up promo for 2. I want all the movies to be available through Eventive, which will help me do some festival screenings and other events and virtual ticketed screenings. Also Vimeo VOD and ultimately Amazon. So hopefully by the end of the year, Slow Romance 1 will be on all 3 platforms.
Cool. One more suggestion. Now, I have not watched, I still have to catch up with the movie again and
Okay.
watch the version with the end credits. At the
It's much
end, is there,
better.
yeah,
It's much better.
well, is there like a, kind of like the end of the James Bond movies? It's always James Bond will return. Do you have like Renee and Allison will return in Slow
Yeah,
Romance 2? No?
we don't have that title, but
You could go
I'm putting
update
on
it.
board that part 2 is coming.
There you go.
And
Excellent.
movies you can watch by themselves and enjoy it. Each of the stories will be contained.
That's nice. Okay, so it'll be just kind of an added, almost like a feature-length Easter egg if you watch part 2, but you haven't seen part 1. Or you have seen both of them, but you could watch them independently. I like that.
Yeah, and I think the opening shot for part 2 after the after the opening credits will probably start with that close up where at the end of part 1 where Allison was hanging out by the water, how part 1 ended. We'll probably start with a shot like that.
Okay.
She's super happy. It's the story takes place maybe 3 weeks after the end of part 1.
Okay. Well, there you go. It's going back to George Lucas. It's like poetry. It rhymes.
That's right.
Anyway. All right.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for your interest in the movie, and you'll get to see part 2 soon when it's done. And yeah, I look forward to making it. I think it's going to be fun. We're just going to rehearse a lot so that we can get the relationship stuff down better.
Yeah. All right.
A lot of
Well,
talk.
what's that?
A lot of talking.
A lot of talking. Yes.
Yeah.
Make sure, yeah, be freshly, lubricated throats, lots of water, lots of tea.
That's right.
All right. So
Watch it again and we'll discuss it one day.
yes, I'm drinking coffee, and I was drinking a lot of coffee while watching Goodbye Dragon Inn.
Should I do a plot synopsis?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think it'll take very long because even though it's 88 minutes, it felt in some parts like it was 7 hours. But tell us about this movie.
So Goodbye Dragon Inn by Ming-Liang Tsai. And it is a slow cinema movie, definitely.
The slowest.
Slowest. But if you approach it as a regular movie. Initially, I had a lot of problems with it, trying to see it as a regular movie, but I got through it. But I had the same experience. It's very slow, and the things happening even slower. So not much happening, and things happening, and the things that are happening slow. Then today, a few hours ago, as I went out to get some food, I was thinking, why would the director Tsai do this? He's a master filmmaker. He can do the movie at whatever pace he wants. So, and he's a Buddhist, and he has said so that he's a practicing Buddhist believer, et cetera, et cetera. So I was thinking, oh, this movie is like Buddhist art, that it's a depiction of, what happens in the movie before I go into my analysis. So it's an old movie theater in Taipei is closing. The movie Goodbye Dragon is playing, and so we just get to watch people who work at the theater and some guests at the theater, a few people who are watching the movie for the duration of the movie. So there isn't much of a plot. There's a lady who has a problem leg, who walks around the theater. There's shots of people watching the movie. There's a Japanese guy who's trying to pick up other guys unsuccessfully. A couple of old actors come to watch their movie one last time. There's a kid who's watching the movie, and towards the end, this is no surprise. There's, I think, the projectionist discovers a rice bun that he thinks that the lady forgot, so he rushes out to find her, and the lady's still there. There's a misconnection. That's the end of the movie. What do you think? Good synopsis?
Yeah.
Good. So my analysis is that this is like a samsaric existence. So samsara is the regular world, or the non-nirvanic, or the world full of suffering in the Buddhist worldview, in Buddhist philosophy, and Buddhist cosmology. So in that world, people are living and they're suffering, and the way out of suffering is the Eightfold Path in Buddhism, which leads to nirvana, which leads to not being born again in the samsaric existence. So the samsaric existence is full of pain, waiting, hunger, getting ill, dying. So the movie theater, the coming death of the movie theater is like a big symbol for death overall. The lady with the bad leg, that reminds me of one of the visions that Prince Siddhartha in Buddhist mythology. That's one of the visions he had, which led him to, become a monk and discover Buddhism, or invent Buddhism. The dissatisfaction in seeing, sick people and death. That anyway, you can read about this in the history of Buddhism. But
wait, let me stop you for a second there, because we were talking before we got on mic. I know very little about Buddhism, but I've heard about it, and it's kind of fascinating to me. You mentioned the history of Buddhism. Is that the title of an actual book, or are you just saying, like, generically there's a history of Buddhism? And would you recommend a text for a schlub like me who wants to learn more? Something that's kind of accessible.
I think just doing a search on Wikipedia Buddhism, that will get you set. As for the introduction, I was just thinking any books on the history of Buddhism. So just for anyone who's interested, I was born in Sri Lanka, which is a Buddhist country. I was raised Buddhist until I decided not to be religious around 16, 17, but still culturally, it's very much, part of my existence, as one would say. And there's a lot of rich ideas in Buddhism, because it was a religion that was developed over 2,500 years. Various people added ideas to it, various monks and commentators. And so it's basically ancient psychology. The Buddha taught that all problems, all suffering is caused by desire, and he taught a way to reduce desire, which is the Eightfold Path and the Four Noble Truths, which people can basically live life a certain way, and that will help you get rid of desire, and that will lead to nirvana, which traditionally is believed to be another plane of existence, one without death, one without suffering. But and lots of other people think this also. My take is that it's a symbolic mental state where the desire for things that you can't have are reduced, and ethical behavior is increased. So you have a much more of a pleasant experience living, or being a mind in this body on this earth. So with that brief introduction to Buddhism, the movie Goodbye Dragon Inn, while a lot of I haven't really seen any American critics talk about it as Buddhist art, or any critics from any country, probably because American critics are not that familiar with Buddhism. It's still a new religion in America, but it's like the old-time major religion in most of Asia. And
let me ask you. So you said you grew up with it until about 16, and then you decided, for whatever reason, that you, or maybe it had but that you decided you didn't want to be religious. But
Right.
After 16 years of being, kind of immersed in this culturally, was
Mhm.
there anything that you brought with you into your adulthood that you can attribute to, positive lessons that you learned from Buddhism? Because it sounds like the reason I'm curious is it sounds like a very positive worldview and spirituality, whereas I
Mhm.
grew up Catholic, which
Mhm.
is very much, for as much of you got the positive, teachings of Jesus and everything, a lot of the Catholic doctrine and religion aspect of it has to do with guilt and fear, a lot of
Mhm.
which I'm still trying to shake off, even though I'm not necessarily a believer. I'm almost afraid to not believe, if that,
Yeah.
that kind of like long-standing version of hell. So I'm just wondering, in terms of the positive aspects of Buddhism that you were kind of raised with, did you carry any of that into your adulthood, or, in rejecting religion, were you able to integrate some of that into whatever it is that you, I guess, not believe, but follow in terms of your life philosophy and ethics?
Right. Yeah, of course. I mean, we're heavily influenced by religions that were taught when we're young. So my whole view on religions is it's just something humans made up to make to control ourselves and to control other people, control children, and to have a society that's reduced in violence, has some sort of an order, right? I don't believe there's actual gods or that there's karma or there's a nirvanic field out there, but who knows? It's a gigantic universe. If a giant, 100-foot tall, being shows up and saying, "Hey, I'm the creator of the universe," I'd be like, "All right, let's let's discuss this. How was this done? Blah blah blah." But yeah, there's a lot of very positive ideas in Buddhism. I mean, the religion gives you, if you think about it long enough, gives you the tools to dismantle the religious aspect of it, and
Hmm.
then look at. I mean, questioning the Buddha isn't encouraged. You're not going to go to hell because you ask questions of the Buddha, right? Or that you doubt the Buddha. I mean, but in various Asian countries, culturally, there's conservatism, there's violence, there's repression. All the problems of humanity is still, still in Buddhist countries.
Hmm.
But unlike in India, which doesn't have a majority Buddhist population, in Sri Lanka, from what I've seen, the Buddhism has sort of lowered the caste system oppression because the Buddha was against the caste system. One of the aspects of Hinduism is the caste system, that Brahmins are on top and, farmers are below, and, people who clean things is below, blah, blah, blah. And these are like fixed for all time, coming from the mouth of some god, blah, blah, blah. The Buddha said none of that is real. None of that is true. The gods themselves have to become human in order to attain nirvana, which is released from the cycle of birth and death. So the Buddhist religion is sort of a reform religion, maybe similar to. I was just thinking about this today. Maybe similar to Christianity being a reform religion against the pagan Roman religions, which Roman society didn't value individual life, especially of the non-elite, that much. Whereas Christianity said, well, every life matters, slavery should be abolished, blah blah blah, right?
And also,
So
there's the similar aspect of the God becoming man to,
right,
to gain I guess a better understanding of itself ultimately.
yeah. So as I was telling you off camera, Buddhism is 2,500 years old, and Christianity is about a little over 2,000 years old. I think some of the ideas, and it's possible there were other religions that influenced both religions, like we talk about the houses of the gods. I forget the Indian term for it, but in slow romance, that's a pre-Buddhist idea that Buddhism still taught. And yeah, there's a lot of very positive ideas, including meditation, including detachment, which, as we talked about earlier, which a lot of the slow cinema movies remind me of some Buddhist ideas in practice. And I have some relatives who are Buddhist monks. Most of my family are Buddhist. So I'm in touch with Buddhism as a cultural practice, and I research it and I read about it as as I look up lots of other things from around the world. But because I'm from Sri Lanka, yeah, I have a pretty good connection to Buddhism.
and so does George Lucas, because the Jedi, they didn't believe in attachments either. Anyway,
Yeah,
let's get back
yeah,
to
the Jedi are very much modeled on Buddhist monks, and it's a combination of Buddhist monks and samurais.
yeah. All right, so Goodbye Dragon Inn. I had a weird experience watching this movie. I streamed it, Metrograph, the
Right,
theater, and I guess they have a streaming service of movies that are showing at the theater.
right.
Signed up for a membership, watched Goodbye Dragon Inn. The streaming service itself wasn't that great. It was either that or my internet was kind of buggy. It could be either, but there were some hitches and stops and starts. And because it's a slow cinema film, here's a good example. There is a 2-minute shot at the end of this film when the lights come up in the theater, and the ticket taker lady that we mentioned with the kind of the bad leg, she hobbles up and down these steps of this old timey movie palace very slowly, very deliberately, and then she kind of walks out of the frame, and we hold for 2 minutes on this
Yeah.
lighted auditorium, and I kept wondering if my connection had just frozen, but no.
Same thing happened to me. Same thing happened to me.
It blew my mind. Now, there's a different interpretation of this movie that I did not get at all. One of the things that was nice about Metrograph is they have some supplemental material. There is a brief interview / video essay with
Nick
Pinkerton, looks like.
Pinkerton
Yes.
is a film critic here in New York. He wrote a book about the movie.
Wow. Okay. But it was interesting to hear him talk about it, because he brings up the context of the movie Goodbye Dragon, and the one that we're discussing, not the movie within the movie, but about how it was sort of about a particular time and place, and sort of a cultural shift in Taiwan that was going on. These old movie palaces were being shuttered. This kind of community aspect of movie going, there was a fear that was going to be going away, which we're seeing 20 plus years later. And also they had a lot of these movie houses were kind of cruising joints. Now in the film, we get these kind of like little, not even vignettes. They're just, we happen upon a character who, say, walks into a bathroom and takes the world's longest piss in a line of 4 other guys. And then someone else comes in and takes a pack of cigarettes from right in front of a guy that he left there, and nobody kind of reacts. There's such a lack of reaction to certain characters doing outrageous things in the movie that I kind of hooked in on this kind of a throwaway line about how the theater is haunted. And I was like, are these ghosts that are kind of being experienced, particularly our Japanese, tourist who's in this theater? It turns out.
Let me interrupt you and interject one idea. There's also in certain Buddhist countries an idea called the realm of hungry ghosts. This is not in every Buddhist country, but in some East Asian countries. Now, hungry ghosts are souls who are in a different realm, who haven't properly moved on with their journey, because the relatives have not done the proper rituals to help them along. So if they don't, so they're hungry, and they're dissatisfied, they're angry, and they may come to haunt you if you don't, do the proper rituals, right? And do the, at the temple, blah, blah, blah. So, I thought that the entire movie shows in a soft way a realm of, ghosts who are, sort of in a ghost space, the dying movie theater. And sometimes, people are, characters are in various shots. Sometimes they're not. There's a little boy there. Is that, are all these people real, or are they actual ghosts? There's a ghostly quality to the entire movie and all the characters. So when you look at it as Buddhist art, it makes more sense that this may be, showing what existence, on a softer level, not the harshest level, in a ghost realm might be like, according to the hungry ghost theory or belief. Back to you.
Well, no, but I mean that's kind of exactly. I mean, I didn't have the language hungry ghost to use for it, but I think it was, this line appears maybe it's halfway through the film, maybe it's earlier, but I kind of hooked into that because it helped me to explain, at least on some level, all this strange behavior. Like maybe some of these people are real and maybe some of them are not. Because as you mentioned, they kind of pop in and out. Our Japanese tourist, he at one point is sitting and there's a lady who is eating nuts, like kind of in the row behind him and a few seats over, and she's loudly cracking these nuts, and then she drops a shoe because her foot's dangling over the seat in front of her, and she kind of awkwardly bends her body to get down and then kind of like falls down out of frame, and then she reappears directly behind him, and at that point he kind of freaks out and leaves the theater and the picture.
Right.
And I was wondering if at some point he realized, she shouldn't have been able to just magically appear behind me. We didn't see her get up and take a seat behind him. She just was kind of there. There's a bizarre scene where this guy, he goes down into I guess the bowels of this place. There's all these different storage boxes and things, and sees these other men hanging around. And it wasn't until the Pinkerton essay that I picked up on the cruising aspect. So it made sense. There are these guys in this theater trying to pick up other strange men. But I think this movie works on a couple of different levels. I even appreciated it. I didn't have, even though I did kind of complain about it being very, very slow, one of the things I liked about it was it's so slow that in a lot of the scenes, aside from the one where the lights come up, because that really is just basically a static frame for 2 minutes.
Yeah, I like that one.
It's nice as
I could tell that's going to be the last time we see the inside of the movie theater.
Yeah, I know, and I could have gotten that with a minute of
Right.
screen time, but the kind of the earlier one of the earlier establishing shots of, it's kind of a cool like open front street lobby. Then there's the sort of inner lobby in the office. We spent a lot of time looking at that in the rain, and then we see that from a different angle. We get such a clear sense of geography from this movie, from just being forced to sit and look at it because there's very little going on, that I'm still thinking about the inner workings of this movie theater that I'll never be able to go to, but it's so vivid in my mind. It's as if I had actually been there 100 times.
The makers of the early episodes of Boba Fett need to watch this movie. It establishes place, really well, whether it's a real place or a spiritual imagined place.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to admire about this movie. I'm curious about the filmmaker. You said that he's done a lot of other movies. Is this sort of par for the course, or is this a departure? Do you know?
This is his usual style, but yeah, he's a well-respected filmmaker. He's done about 40 works of all kinds, maybe 11 or 12 features, and he works in this mode in a sort of a slow cinema style, for lack of a better term. And he did a movie called What Time Is It There, about what time is it in Tokyo? I forget the title, but there's a bunch. You can Wikipedia him. I mean, yeah.
So I think this movie kind of operates on three different levels. One, there's the literal movie, which I want to say is the weakest level, just because there's not really a narrative through line. It's just something kind of happens. And I think you mentioned this on Twitter earlier in the day, possibly when you were still not quite as high on the film as you were after you made that kind of Buddhist connection. But you said it's almost shot as if it's a fictional version of a documentary. I think that's pretty spot on.
There's a style of filmmaking that Kevin Jerome Everson practices. He reenacts documentaries with some minor changes, but the finished work looks very much like a documentary that doesn't have much of a story, right? And they're usually short, like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, sometimes features. And he's made like 100 of them. So to me, if you were to show this movie to someone, say, oh, this is a documentary about this movie theater that's closing, just shots, observational documentary with no narrative, people will be like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, it still looks like a movie. It doesn't quite have that documentary quality to it, but it also does. It's a very, very strange fine line. The second level I think it works on is that kind of a spiritual level that you're talking about. I mean, if I knew more about Buddhism, I'd be able to speak to it better, but it sounds like it checks out. And the third is sort of this historical piece that is almost so personal and specific to a certain time that I feel like the people who were there and were witnessing this transitional moment in history, it possibly really resonated with them. But, from us here watching 20 years later, we can only like hear about it from Steve Pinkerton, but like, oh, that makes sense. I can see how how this
Yeah,
movie would reflect that.
Nick Pinkerton, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, so so for me, or probably for most people in America, as a fiction entertainment, as a fiction entertainment movie, it doesn't really work because it doesn't have comedy. I was thinking of Stranger Than Paradise, which I don't know if you saw Mystery Train, so that's Jarmusch. So it's slow, it's that pace, it's that kind of look, colorful. But at least Jarmusch's movie had a lot of comedy and character stories happening. So it's entertainment. So it's the entertainment. It doesn't work as entertainment, but it does work as art, like either documentary art or as Buddhist religious art. So I think if you look at it as art, it's more interesting.
Definitely. I mean, it's a beautiful looking movie. I mean,
Mhm.
I almost wonder, and I didn't get the history of this, from that video essay, but I assume this was a real theater. I don't imagine they had to do much dressing up or, production design around
Mhm.
it. And one of the things I thought was kind of funny is even though this movie is almost 20 years old and it's in, a country foreign and a culture foreign to my own, they still get some of those details just right about the annoying movie theater goers, about people trying to sneak into the theater because that's I think the tourist guy, he shows up and he's kind of hanging out in the lobby for a while, and that's when we get the really good view of the lobby. But the ticket taker lady, it turns out she's like washing dishes or something in another hallway, so she doesn't see him come in to take his ticket. And he just kind of wanders in. He's sneaking into the movies in that he didn't pay, but it's almost like I showed up. I want to, I've got money, but there's
That's
what do
right.
they do?
There's
Go back out in the rain?
no one to pay it to. About the theater, the filmmaker had a movie that was a success at that theater. So the owner, and I read about this, the owner asked him to collaborate with him. I think the filmmaker bought and ran the movie theater for like a year. And
Oh,
so I think he owned the theater by the time that movie was shot.
wow. Yeah, I almost want to see a movie about the making of, and the history of Goodbye Dragon Inn. Do you know
There,
anything about the movie, the Goodbye Dragon Inn, that they were showing on the screen? You mentioned that there were some actors in the audience. Were they actually from that movie?
yeah, looked like it. Goodbye Dragon Inn, the movie that's in the movie, is a famous martial arts movie. Apparently a big hit. King Hu, I forget his name. I forget his exact name, but anyway, people can Google it. Apparently it was a success back in the day.
I really liked, and this is, as much as an insight as we get into the ticket taker's, head, because I don't even know if she says anything.
Yeah, I don't think she does.
But there's a moment, and it's sort of like one of the famous publicity stills of the film, of the actress kind of looking up, and you see the kind of the texture of the screen
Right,
playing across her face.
right.
At one point, she's in the theater and she looks up and she sees this female samurai. I guess she's going into battle and kicking all kinds of ass. And like we see a bit of that screen, and we see that screen playing across her face, and she really seems to be entranced by it. I don't know
Mhm.
what's going on inside of her head, but if I had to imagine, it's like here's a heroic figure, leading this amazing adventurous life, and I'm here cooking a bow or something in my
Right.
little pot in the ticket booth, taking it up to a guy that maybe he notices me, maybe he's a ghost, I have no idea. I guess he rides away on a scooter at the end, so I guess that answers that question. But there's that missed connection aspect is not relegated to just the end, because when she goes up to the office to leave this role for him, there's nobody up there. And
Right.
later when she goes back, the bun is still there and there's this ashtray full of cigarettes, but we don't even see that there's a projectionist in the building until like the very end. Like, where was he? Was he down in the basement cruising for dudes as well? I have no idea what's going on.
The one in Buddhism, the samsaric state, the regular world, is full of dissatisfaction, misconnections, death, getting old, things shutting down, apprehension, all kinds of stuff. So you see a lot of that in the movie. So that's why I think if you approach it as Buddhist art, it's interesting, interesting to watch, or as art, as a sort of a documentary reenaction of a moment, or even a mood, right? It's more interesting. The movie makes more sense than sort of the kind of movie that we're used to as fiction entertainment.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of like that Seinfeld thing. It's about nothing, but I mean literally in this case, because at least Seinfeld had a plot and kind of forward momentum with the characters. The one thing I took away from this is I want to read that book by Nick Pinkerton.
There you go. I'm
I want to
sure.
learn more about this. I mean, I wonder if he gets into at all that spiritual connection. Is this Buddhist thing? Is this something I missed? Is this a connection that you just made this afternoon, or did you had you read something
Yeah.
about this? Or
No one had talked about it. I don't even think Nick Pinkerton talks about it. I haven't read any analysis where critics or reviewers are saying this could be Buddhist art that depicts the realm of the hungry ghost, or depicts this is a version of samsara. The samsara is also the hell in Buddhism, or there are different versions of samsara. Our regular existence is also considered samsara, which is the opposite of nirvana, which is the goal of Buddhism, right?
well, I can definitely
Nirvana is
understand
like
that.
heaven. What was that?
I said I can definitely understand that.
There you go. So nirvana is like equivalent in Christianity would probably be heaven. Um, anyway, so no one else has written about it. I did a Google search, no one else has picked up on it.
Well, there
But
you go. Look here.
in Asian countries,
Finish Slow Romance 2 through 4.
right?
And then in 2023, which will be the 20th anniversary of Goodbye Dragon Inn, write your book length or novelette analysis of the film from a Buddhist perspective. It's great. You can print money off of this thing.
There you go. Well, I already tweeted it, and hopefully some reviewers will pick up on it, and maybe Nick Pinkerton talks about it. So, but it's interesting that so few people, or maybe almost no one, has picked up on the the film as Buddhist art. Possibly, even though the filmmaker has said he's a practicing Buddhist, right?
Yeah.
I think this points out to one of the areas where art criticism or art appreciation is weak, because we try to, everyone tries to approach film as this one thing, one unified field where you can say a movie is good or bad. Not really. It depends on the maker. If it's made if it's made from a certain background with certain ideas in mind, if we don't know those ideas, we don't pick up on those ideas, then the movie looks like a failure or something that makes no sense.
Well, I think there's a middle ground here. We've sort of talked about this before. I think it's also possible to approach a film with a background and try and work out some of those themes and ideas in the movie and
Mhm.
still end up with a poor quality movie. Like you could have someone who has the expertise that the filmmaker is bringing to it and say, well, yeah, but it was terribly executed and poorly interpreted. And,
But I thought the movie was executed well. The
yeah.
shots were good. It's just there isn't much of a story that we're used to,
Mhm.
or any comedy or drama that we're used to. So that leads me to think this is allegorical or symbolic, and those people are maybe ghosts. And as a reflection of the Buddhist idea of samsara, yeah, that's interesting to watch for an hour and a half.
I will push back. There's a little bit of comedy in here, kind of
Little bit.
interspersed out. Like there's the bathroom scene. There's also the bit where the tourist is sitting in a seat. He changes seats. I think it's because someone's smoking and he ends up sitting in another aisle. And then someone else behind him puts their bare feet like right up against his face. And so he turns to get away from the smoke and he runs smack dab into the feet. And I think someone else tries to pick him up, or it's like this, comedy of discomfort.
There's a little bit of comedy there, yeah.
Yeah. But as far as getting to know who any of these people are, there's a brief exchange at the end where it's the older guy in the leather jacket who might have been, maybe that was one of the actors he mentioned, because he does get kind of emotional watching the film.
Yeah.
You're wondering what's going on here. He runs into the old guy who's got the little kid with him. And he's like,
Right.
"Oh, teacher, what are you doing here?" So they've got some kind of a history. So
Maybe
yeah,
those are actors from the movie, or they could be ghosts, of those people.
wow. I need to watch this movie again. You've watched it twice, right? Since in
I've
the last.
watched it like 3 times before the show now. Well, the first couple of times I didn't like it too much. I was like, yeah, this is way too slow. Then I thought of it, oh, maybe it's Buddhist art. And then with that in mind, I looked at it. I was like, yeah, as Buddhist art, it makes a lot of sense. And it's possible the filmmaker wasn't even trying to make it Buddhist art, but because of his background and the way he makes movies, it just ended up that way. And some of the ideas in there are, very much related to, the temporary nature of existence and suffering that's inherent in existence that's talked about in Buddhism at length.
Yeah. It's kind of like Scorsese. The guy cannot make a non-Catholic movie on some, and that's not a knock. It just goes to show, kind of upbringing and how your psyche will play out in your art, whether you want to or not. All right. Well, I think I'm ready to say goodbye to Dragon Inn.
We almost did it a whole hour on it, so that's good.
Yeah, and I want to check out Goodbye Dragon Inn, the movie that's inside the movie, because it looks pretty wild. Yeah.
That looks more exciting.
And like there's more of a story to it as well.
Right. The corrupt official who's also a good swordsmaster who's feared by the locals.
Dig it. All right, man. Well, yeah, thanks for recommending this. I take it you hadn't seen this before. How did we come
parts of it? I had seen parts of it, and it became highly recommended by a lot of people. So finally, we watched it.
Excellent. Well, I don't know that I can highly recommend it. I can't recommend it to many people, but those that will check it out, I think there's a lot here, and I think there's also a lot to explore and think about outside the context of the movie, which I think is one of the hallmarks of great art. So,
yeah, as an art piece, it's interesting.
Yeah. So Sujewa, thanks a lot. So tell us again where people can find out about you and your movies in progress.
slowromancemovie.com, Sujewa.com, and Sujewa Fantastic on Twitter. And Slow Romance, The Secret Society for Slow Romance, it is out on Vimeo VOD, and we're working on part 2. Eventually, that movie, the first one, will be world famous, hopefully by the end of the year.
Excellent. And you can also find all of that stuff down below in the description of links and stuff. And yeah, so thanks everybody for watching the latest episode of IndieSeen. We'll be back next month. Are we talking about Inland Empire next month? Is that it?
That's the plan, yeah.
Okay. And we've got a big, yep. And there'll be a first time watch for me. And we won't want to spoil what's happening in April, but it's going to be a really fun, I think, big show. I'm very excited about it. Yeah. Yeah, thanks everybody for watching. If you dug this content, please tell all your friends, like and subscribe to the channel. Follow Sujewa on all of his platforms and on Twitter. Show the man some love. Rent The Secret Society for Slow Romance. Find out the setup for the sequel that's coming, and then movies 3 and 4. My God, man, you're a workhorse. All right, take care, sir.
Don't be a hungry ghost.
Yes, don't be a hungry ghost. Get your fill. All right, man. Take care. I'll catch you next month.
Talk to you soon.
All right, bye.